So, Akira Kurosawa films are, of course, treasures of Japanese film. And in a way, it's quite interesting that because the samurai warriors depicted in Kurosawa's films are not really something that Japanese would find authentic or genuine. But still, it rings a bell today. And it was a creative genius of Kurosawa to come up with these samurai figures. For example, the Seven Samurai, which of course inspired many film directors and has been adapted to in many remakes. The Seven Samurai characters play their respective roles, which with their own unique personality and roles in the samurai team. And this depiction of the collaboration between samurai warriors was something that would have existed in Japan for sure, when it was the name of the game for samurai warriors to fight with each other and fight for the road and to fight with their honor at stake and so on. But the way it is, the samurai ethics is depicted in the Seven Samurai is perhaps a bit different from the historically accurate ways of the samurai. So, in a way, it has been dramatized, and of course, Kurosawa would have been influenced by many great works of world cinema. So it is international collaboration, really, that made the Seven Samurai possible. Although the cultural memes featured in the film is, of course, purely Japanese. The reason why it struck the bell in many people's heart was because it was international in the beginning and in the making. And the same can be said about Tsubaki Sanjiro and Yojimbo. These great two-part film about a lone young samurai played by Toshiro Mifune, going through difficult situations and making things possible that would not have been possible without ingenuity and courage and a little bit of luck. Of course, we could certainly trace back in Japanese history to the original figures that would have inspired such works. The fact is that both Tsubaki Sanjiro and Yojimbo are not purely Japanese. I mean, if you look at the historical records, the lone samurai called Ronin in those areas when a samurai didn't serve a particular master and went about in the world in search of jobs and food and positions and so on. These lone samurais probably shared some cunning and ingeniousness and quick responses and opportunist behaviors with the protagonist in Yojimbo and Tsubaki Sanjiro. But still it's different. It is a dramatized version of the historical fact, and especially scenes involving pistols, guns, for example, in I think Yojimbo. It's purely fictional. The characters that are depicted in these great films are fictional too, and the social confrontations are also fictional too. So in a way, it's an amalgam of interesting inspirations and historical relics or historical traditions are inherent in Japan. So in a way, Kurosawa's works on the samurai culture, which really influenced and which had a big impact on the world cinema, are in a sense combinations of genuine Japanese culture and the creative imagination of the artist. So in today's jargon, there have been hallucinations of Akira Kurosawa, visual hallucinations, because as you might know, Akira Kurosawa was a great painter as well. He painted many scenes for the films before he went about the business of directing the work. So, I'm sure, as well as writing a script for these films, Kurosawa probably had a really vivid image of what the scene should be before he, even started directing the film himself. And, so that was the really did first certain hand of the master to, come up with vivid visual imagery that would guide the creative process of the whole thing. So, this is quite interesting point, I think, and the same can be actually said about the great master of Yasuji Ozu. His films have been called very Japanese. Tokyo Story, Early Spring, Early Summer, Late Spring, and Autumn Afternoon. These films are, on the surface, very Japanese, and typically, Japanese people are in it. But in a sense, these are also fusions of different cultural perspectives. It's well-known fact that Ozu was detained in Singapore at the end of the Second World War, and during that time, Ozu watched many American films, including I Hear Gone with the Wind, and it was on the strength of having watched all these Hollywood films that Ozu went about the business of creating all these wonderfully Japanese masterpieces. So it is a well-known fact that Kurosawa was very much influenced by Russian literature and Russian films. And for example, in the film Idiot, of course the title suggests that he took the inspiration from Dostoevsky's great novel. But not only that, I think the way that Kurosawa depicts human psychology in his works, the depth and intricacy and very complicated shadow and ups and downs and all these involvements of the unconscious and the dramaturgy, if you like, of the interaction between the protagonists, I think was partly inspired by his exposure, Kurosawa's exposure to the Russian literature. And in that sense, some part of Kurosawa's films come from the Russian tradition, which is a really strange way to look at it, but it is certainly true. So I think the case of Kurosawa, taken together with the case of Ozu, is a great lesson for any people who are interested in the creative process. No man is an island of its own, and even if art form seems to come straight from a tradition of a particular cultural region, it is never alone, and it is actually resonant creation of many different influences. And actually, when a particular work of art comes from the interaction of many different waves of influences, the more successful it would become. So I think the next time you see a Kurosawa film, you might actually see samurai warriors walking around, and that, of course, Japanese, but also you might have a hint of the Russian influences and the hallucinations of the great film director, and that would be the celebration of the whole human civilization that has made such great series of artwork possible. So thank you for listening.